So another really interesting property. Here we've got damp in virtually all external rooms. And in fact, we've got three of the most common types of damp. The one that is missing is groundwater that causes rising damp because it's London and we don't have groundwater. So there's dampness on the inside, and that the history is that there was a gutter that was joined and there was a downpipe and that's been replaced and new guttering. There was concern about the chimney breast and there's no cowl on top of the flue, but that's not really the big problem. The big problem is on the outside, the render has cracked and there's paint. Paint is essentially hiding the cracks, but it's exacerbating any problems that you might have. Basically, water is getting in through the render and can't be absorbed back outwards, so it comes inside, and you can tell that because you've got the brown staining downstairs. There's also an issue of the flue. The flue, apparently some water comes in at the top of the flue, and I think the best thing to do is to just shelter it, put some sort of a tile or something to stop the water going on it. So there's dampness in the kitchen. There had been a leak above in the bathroom above, and there's condensation, but it's currently dry. And it's very common to have condensation in kitchens. Most kitchens probably have to some extent. That the rust around the plaster as reading sort of illustrates that. There's dampness upstairs. So here you're not getting so much staining. So it's likely that's what's happening is that the dampness is just partially passing through the building material, not the whole way through. That's why you're not getting the staining. But a damp wall is a cold wall, increasing the risk of condensation. The bathroom, you've got lots of plants, which is great, but you have to remember every litre of water you put into the plants every week is going to come back out as a litre of vapour, water as vapour. You're getting mould in under the sink, and mould is caused by excess vapour. It's where the surface relative humidity goes above 85% for long periods of time. So that's excess vapour is the primary cause, and that's defined as where the internal dew point goes above the outside temperature. You can improve it by improving air circulation, by insulation, but ultimately you don't have a fan in the bathroom, and that would be a starting point. There's a room to the front, which I think you occasionally use as a study, but don't heat it very much, and that's getting lots of mould. It was dry at the time of the survey, but that will be from excess vapour, primarily from the bathroom. But the kitchen didn't have an extractor fan either, and you do have a dehumidifier, but it's the one that's suitable for low temperature. It's a desiccant rather than compression type dehumidifier, and they are better the compression type ones under about 12 degrees centigrade, but above that you're better off having a standard compression one. I have both types, and I alternate depending on what's required. So a lot of the damp had actually dried out already. So a lot of it is residual, but it takes between 6 and 9 months of low vapor levels or normal vapor levels. But, you know, you want to keep the dew point below the outside temperature for long periods of time. So there's a lot of discussion about the guttering, and you've got a lot of your neighbours guttering, the water from the neighbours guttering. I think maybe 4 properties was going down through yours, and unfortunately it's going into a gully that was dry. Now a dry gully is normally because there's a crack underground, because it's supposed to be wet to stop the smells coming back from the drain. The fact that it's dry tells me it's probably blocked, and you can either bypass it or you can get a CCTV drain survey and get somebody to line it. But it's over 100 years old, or it's probably about 100 years old, so it's not surprising. The other thing is you have to remember is keep the subfloor ventilation as free flowing as possible. just in case. I don't think there's any risk with the subfloor, but you don't want to find out the hard way. So in the loft, so there had been some leak from the top, the ridge at the top, but there are no signs of leaks in the loft at the moment. So here is the thermal image. This time of year, you can't tell a huge amount from the thermal image, but in winter, when there's at least a 10 degrees centigrade difference between the inside and outside, is when you can identify where your best insulation winds are. And typically the loft will be the first place to start, and you only have very thin insulation in the loft. I don't have your data from your data loggers, but have a look online at Damp.ai/detect, and I will play out with an example of somebody else's data loggers from wintertime, so you can see a comparative. So here's Damp.detect. I preloaded it, but I'll show you how to do it. You just open up, upload your files, which you will have downloaded from Sensor Blue app, select the wall to look at and the nearest vapor source. The time of the survey, the damp wall was 12.9 degrees centigrade. It was 8 o'clock on the 12th. So you press the graph sign and up it comes. And what it's telling me is the surface relative humidity is above 60%. It gets as high as 85%, which is not within the mold zones, the mold risk zone. So I think you're okay from that point of view, but it does tell me that there is quite a high level of relative humidity. The vapor, the dew point, is a measure of the amount of vapor in air expressed as degrees centigrade. It's also the temperature where condensation takes place at. And it is high, it's higher than the outside temperature. You should be keeping it lower. If you had a perfectly ventilated property, your internal dew point would be the same as the external dew point, because you'd be replacing internal air with external air, and clearly it's a lot higher. All you need to do is get below this line by increasing ventilation and dehumidification. Thank you very much. So in summary, you've got penetrating damp, you've had a leak, but that stopped, and you've got condensation, and we know that for sure because you're getting mold everywhere, and you only get mold in excess vapor, but given the lack of ventilation, it's not surprising. Thank you very much.